Liberals, you did it. You did it. You successfully undermined your left flank. And in the process of doing that, of course, someone right-wing was going to rise up to the occasion and come across as a completely normal centrist, right? That's the Asmongold phenomena. The most consequential aspect of like the destinies of the world consistently coming after me for their own personal narcissistic vengeance quest has made it so that I have so many fucking ridiculous claims that are completely made up about me swirling around in the ecosystem for all of the dumb fuck apolitical people to tune into with a network of slop tubers that are constantly pumping out this kind of content, that ultimately people that don't actually get any sort of fucking critical examination of their commentary or their worldview get to fucking rise up to the top for the liberals in general, in terms of just like always fucking unconditionally and unyieldingly, uncompromisingly being coming at this issue from a pro-Palestinian side. When liberals are more predisposed with attacking their left flank for demonstrating true anti-fascist principles, then of course someone who presents themselves as a centrist like Asmongold is going to rise to the occasion and actually unironically build a momentum and an audience off of said liberals who now tune into him to think, well, he's at least better than Hassan. He's not fucking dangerous radical like Hassan is. Meanwhile, Asmongold is also a pipeline to Nick Fuentes. People, or whether it be Germany's National Socialist Party, okay? The Nazis wanted to do socialism, but for the Volk, the chosen people, the Aryan people, okay? Except they weren't really invested in socialism at all. They just used the momentum and the popularity, the existing popularity of left populist statements. That's it. It is a way to package a nefarious agenda that is inherently violent and also directly antithetical to any sort of socialist development. Mussolini, yes, Mussolini was literally a Marxist revisionist. Exactly. I'm so annoyed because I want to watch the Mussolini thing that came out. Oh, God, I'm all over the place. There's a Mussolini TV show that came out that's really good apparently, but I can't fucking watch it in America, unfortunately, without a VPN. The Son of the Century, that tracks his like development, his political development. Okay. Yeah, Mussolini, Son of Century is the show I'm talking about. Anyway, so here, listen to the first half and then listen to the second half. This is the reason why I pulled this clip is because it shows how he presents himself and what his actual real opinions are.
And it polices anti-Semitism. You can't get your FEMA rescue money. You can't get your Harvard grants and loans. You can't get citizenship or a visa in America. Is that all this administration can do? We were promised revolutionary change. We were promised vengeance. We were promised a golden age. And what we're getting is renaming things, and like the ADL is on steroids. The ADL is taking steroids. They're looks maxing. That's all this administration seems to do. Cracker Barrel, who could forget? I mean, think about it. That's all this administration does. They came in, they renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Oh, they renamed the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Gulf. They should have named it the Gulf of Israel, right? Changed the names of the military bases back to Fort Bragg. Take that. And now this, they took the Cracker Barrel logo, brought it back to the original. Now we're changing the Department of Defense to the Department of War. And look, if the Trump administration was actually doing things, this would be a cool bonus.
So, before you get to the last 30 seconds,
look,
the first 2 minutes of this 2-minute and 34-second video is, if it cuts away at that point, the first 2 minutes of this 2-minute and 34-second video comes across like he's anti-Trump, and he's saying that like the revolutionary changes that he promised, like uplifting American lives and all this stuff is just fake, and he's just simply pro-Israel, and he's just jiggling keys in front of it's his base of support. And a lot of those clips, a lot of his community recognize now that there is a major audience for this kind of commentary coming from a guy who is a fallen fan of Donald Trump. Okay? If you watch the first 2 minutes, you think, what the fuck's going on? And I see this a lot in the comments. People going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm agreeing with Nick Fuentes. I can't believe I'm agreeing with Nick Fuentes. I'm a black liberal and I'm agreeing with Nick Fuentes. What the hell is happening? Okay? That's what's going on here. He has been able to capture the attention of so many people. Him, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, many of these Republican right-wing commentary people on the independent media side have been able to capture the attention of so many liberals. Okay? And that comes from a void in the left flank. And it also stems from the reality that we are too predisposed with fighting against one another instead of ensuring that we have some semblance of messaging discipline on this issue, and also partially because the most moneyed side of the liberal media ecosystem is entirely pro-Israel. Okay? So when you do have a guy who is able to cut through the fucking noise and develop a major audience online, someone like myself, they get fucking tarred and feathered by dumb fuck liberals and also even dumb fuck leftists who believe the dumb fuck liberals and the dumb fuck Republicans. Okay? This is something that I tried to explain to people in the past where I was like, look, this is part of the reason why I have regularly maintained this idea that unless it's like literally someone being pro-Israel, I'm just not going to spend a whole deal of time attacking even liberal content creators. Okay? Imagine thinking Nick fucking Fuentes is a centrist. I'm not saying that. I'm not even remotely presenting it as such. But this is a byproduct of having a message void for the left, and this is it. So this message isn't for whoever you think it's for. It's not for like the molestiny type content creators. Okay, those guys are never going to change their fucking behavior. This is for their audiences who do actually care about growing fascism in this country and have just been deluded into thinking that the most successful way to combat it is by attacking the fucking left flank of the Democratic Party and assuming that people who are critical of the supposed left flank of American politics are actually critical because they have some sinister purpose behind it, because they want Donald Trump to win or some shit. Okay? Because if you consistently consider, I mean, this has historically happened post-World War II. It has happened leading up to World War II when fascist movements are growing. Liberals consistently engaging in appeasement for growing fascist movements out of fear that they're going to lose power, lose their grip on power, end up offering amenities and offering power to the fascists because they think they can just like wield some semblance of wield some power to I guess like maybe prevent full-blown fascist takeover. And it is a failure. It was a failure before World War II, and it has been an abject failure after World War II. That's why you see so many anti-communists end up directly, like anti-communist liberals, like Canada is a great example of this, like directly becoming a critical supply line for consistent fascist movements, because who are the most vicious post-World War II? Who are the most vicious and most successful anti-communists? fascists were. The ones that weren't killed or the ones that weren't arrested post World War II, they were immediately activated by liberals who wanted to engage in a Cold War, by liberal capitalist democracies that wanted to engage in a Cold War against the real scary enemy and keep the real scary enemy, the USSR, at bay. Okay? This is real dangerous shit. Now that I showed you the first 2 minutes, let's see what his actual opinions are.
If the Trump administration was actually doing things, this would be a cool bonus. And maybe you could make a defense for it. No pun intended. Maybe there's a case to be made for this. But if you're not doing anything, like take a look around. The deportation's not happening. The legal immigration will continue. 600,000 Chinese students. War in Ukraine is, if anything, it's getting worse. We do this every night. I mean, you get it. The state of this administration, it's not making as much progress as it needs to be.
Yeah. Plays the first minutes, then you ask for 15 minutes before playing the last 15 seconds. Okay, brother. Yeah, I wonder why I did that. I did that to literally show you how this nefarious, cynical propaganda works. Okay? The first 2 minutes of it is all things that prime a liberal audience into finding Nick Fuentes totally appropriate because his criticisms of Donald Trump are valid here in the first 2 minutes. Okay? The last 30 seconds, however, show his true perspective. Oh, Trump is not serious enough about the mass deportations. You pause to explain, people yell at you. If you play without commenting, people yell at you. You cannot win. I know, it's stupid. So, that's it. So many of you are proving why Nick Fuentes is getting popular because you're so fucking TikTok brain you can't function past 5 minutes on a single topic. Yep. And there are a million different videos like this all over TikTok. His fans are basically blasting this shit all over the timeline, all up and down the timeline, because they recognized that there aren't that many skilled orators that are actively communicating how fucked up the Trump administration is, especially with its like undying loyalty to Israel. Okay? And they are presenting Nick Fuentes as like an anti-Trump possible progressive figure. It's crazy. Meanwhile, I don't think his opinions have changed at all. This is what I mean when I say the danger of like allowing Tucker Carlson all the way back in 2016. I wrote about this extensively. I talked about this extensively. Liberals were so predisposed with attacking the Bernie Sanderses and the left flank of their own party's base of support for being true progressives on a lot of economic issues, created an environment where there was a void in the discourse from the left flank, and this is broad. When I say left flank, I don't mean like literally these guys are leftists. I just mean like to the left of the Republican Party on the media ecosystem. There were no voices that were actually channeling a true, earnest, economic populist message. So Tucker Carlson took advantage of that on Fox News every night and presented himself as one of the only voices that was actually channeling left-wing economic populism. For years, he did this. Okay? For years, he did this. And a similar thing is now happening with Israel. Okay? That's it. There's a reason why people think like, well, some of the most, visible, some of the most like, some of the loudest voices for Palestinian emancipation are right-wingers and far-right people. a lot of liberals also have this idea that these guys can be fixed, Meanwhile, they don't realize that in that process, they themselves are actually leaning into the nefarious part of his agenda, the nationalist message. Okay?
Yeah, those people are just freaks. The whole
look,
anyone that has any genuine racial hatred, we have to just say there's something wrong with you. I understand not wanting to live around black people. I get it. And I understand when you see what black people do, some of them, I understand hating that. But this whole autistic racial, actual racialism, actual racial militant hatred, it is like a freak show, because that comes from an emotional place. It is one thing to say that, there are whites and blacks, and black people clearly are not on our level of development, and that's why they're struggling. That's why they're not integrating well, and that's why there are these problems. It's one thing to say that clinically, and it's one thing to see what they do and get frustrated by it and get angry about it. It's a whole other thing to have this persistent antipathy for vast groups of people. That is just a low IQ, a dysfunctional thing. And everything, but that doesn't make you mad. It's yeah, it makes me mad. I'm not filled with racial hatred for an entire group. Even the Jews, as much as justified as it would be. No. But even I do actually like a lot of Jewish people. I even though Jewish people have ruined my life in many ways and they do horrible things, I don't have a hatred for them as a group, and I could say nice things about them, But that comes from being a Christian. That's the kind of peace, and that's the kind of disposition that you can only have if you love God, if you truly have love in your heart for people. And it's no coincidence. It's always these pagans that harbor this intense animosity all the time. And if you have that, you really got to get over that. And that doesn't mean you need to stop being racist. It doesn't mean you got to stop being a quote unquote racist, but you got to let go of wrath. You have to let go of anger. You can't let that define you.
Yeah. He's his racial animosity stems from a totally reasonable anger that he feels, born out of maybe even the structural undermining of black people. Do you understand how he is nefariously packaging just regular ass racist opinions, but recalculating and restructuring it in a way where it is supposed to make sense to the normie, to the average normie, while simultaneously casting people who have racial animus for, as he calls it, autistic racial purity and race realism opinions. He's saying in this short video, he basically says that black people are undermined structurally, and it creates an environment where they end up behaving in violent ways, and that creates resentment, and that's an understandable resentment to have. Okay? Of course, ultimately, this is not, ultimately, he doesn't even believe that. He does believe the racial purity politics. He's a fucking Nazi, right? He is still saying that there is a genetic component associated with it, but you shouldn't be super mad ultimately about it. This is why he's a dangerous propagandist ultimately, because he is trying to normalize the eugenicist perspectives that he has in a way that can go either way, where you can just where he gives himself a level of plausible deniability by saying I'm not like those kinds of racists, when he very clearly is those kinds of racists, and his entire community is that kind of racist. And of course, the hallmark of Republican thought is once again always saying a whole bunch of debunked and insane nonsense, and simultaneously packaging it as common sense, right? One example that immediately comes to mind is like one of these fucking Nazis on Twitter that went viral a while back, which is, of course, it's always happening, unfortunately, was the idea that someone was trying to like do this like normalized racism argument about like who even actually is fond of their black neighbors, right? And I think it initially went it initially went viral. One of your bots banned me for a reason. I just disagreed. Dude, please stop. I don't care, okay? And it wasn't like you got literally banned and unbanned. You got timed out, man. Shut the fuck up. You said L take, bro. Nick Fuentes is in his own circle. You can't compare him with anyone mentioned. Just stop. It doesn't matter. You got timed out. Please stop being such whiny fucking crybabies, man. I'm trying to make a broader point here, and I can't. I have to deal with like everyone's own personal fucking me bullshit. Okay. Oh my God, my voice is not being heard right now in this very moment. I got timed out for 600 seconds. Unacceptable. You got timed out for 10 minutes. Calm down. God. We're talking about the oppression of governments. We're talking about like growing fascist movements in here. And you're literally thinking like the major oppression that I'm facing here is that a moderator timed me out for 10 minutes. Shut up. Jesus Christ. Anyway. Take a breath. The point I was making was that there was a Twitter post that went viral where it was like, oh, people that say they don't have like racist opinions have like never lived around black people. If you lived around black people, you would immediately realize, why people hold on to these like racist resentments that people call racist, but they're not, all this shit. And it went viral on Twitter first in like the neo-Nazi circles. And then people started like quote retweeting it and being like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about? Because like, while something might come across as like common sense, depending on how insane your immediate circle online is, and while certain kinds of narratives can be boosted by other people, especially at a time when like there's unprecedented virality for right-wing neo-Nazi type sentiments on Twitter, okay, ultimately in the real world, the common sense narrative is not living around black people is a terrifying prospect and it's really fucked up, okay? Especially for diverse environments like major cities in this fucking country where you do live around a lot of black and brown people in a diverse environment. It's so stupid. It's an incredibly stupid statement. You're childish. You're like a baby. You're afraid of people that you have never actually lived around from afar. Because if you did, you would realize that there is no genuine resentment or fear against your fucking neighbors. And the same goes for undocumented migrants as well. People think like undocumented migrants are like a special subcategory because they don't even realize that they're, living around undocumented migrants with regular frequency. They're working in the kitchen, they're working at the grocery store, they're working at the poultry facility down the street, they're a part of your community. It's just that you have never encountered someone and know that they are undocumented. So you have this like false notion that they're all scary. They're all scary. A fear of the unknown. And the internet is bricking your brain. That's it. And many of these issues would be solved if you actually did live around these people. Okay? But my point is, ultimately, clips that you see of far-right neo-Nazi style figures like Nick Fuentes are becoming increasingly more dangerous at a time when there is a real need by the left, by liberals, for bold anti-Trump, anti-fascist voices. And a skilled orator is capable of taking advantage of that void in discourse by routinely undermining Trump, routinely attacking Trump from an understandable perspective, from a real perspective, from a real genuine and valid point of critique, to draw the attention and gain popularity and gain charitability amongst a broader audience, to then slam in and normalize this somewhat effective, dangerous race realist framework. Okay? That's it. You filled out void, bro. That's you. You're just unk. And I think that's why Nick comes across the Gen Z better. I think a lot of Gen Z's first interaction with politics has come from like apolitical slop tuber shit. And those apolitical slop tubers who present themselves as like centrist liberals are also more far right than they actually present themselves. They're also capable of leaning on pre-existing systems of violence that people have normalized. Homeless people are scary, dangerous, violent. Undocumented migrants are scary, dangerous, violent. There's a real crime problem. The Democrats are not addressing it. All this stuff that literally led to the Trump victory. And when their first foray into politics is like, there's a fucking leftist guy out there that's a radical piece of shit, they go, oh yeah, fuck this guy. I'm writing him off. I'm not going to listen to what he has to say. After years and years of fucking this kind of commentary just circulating all around the apolitical drama slop tuber sphere. Of course, a guy that hasn't gotten that level of attention and that level of critical lens, who is also a skilled orator who can read the room, okay, will then turn around and look for alternatives that they think are better versions, better speakers. That's it. Please stop sending me this. I'm not going to click on this, okay? I'm not. I'm not going to click on this link. Please. Please stop spamming it. Tommy Vitor from Pod Save has talked about this. You should talk to him. I do talk to him about this as well as other shit. But do you understand? You understand why? Because if you listen to Dan Bilzerian for 30 seconds before he starts talking about the Talmud and how this is the nature of the Jew, you think, what the fuck's this guy saying? I thought this guy was a real piece of shit. Now he's talking about the humanity of Palestinians and how they're being unjustifiably slaughtered by Israel. That makes a lot of sense to me. And if you only see the first 30 seconds, your takeaway might be, wow, Dan Bilzerian's kind of woke. I agree with him. Not realizing that there's a lot more to that argument from his perspective. Okay? In any case, the danger is here. And it's crazy to me that people don't recognize that danger. And one of the more mainstreamified versions of this is the establishment Democrats and their refusal to support a Democratic candidate because of the concerns of advocates of a foreign country, the country being Israel. Okay? Here's an article that came out from the New York Times. Hochul, Schumer, and Jeffries' unwillingness to endorse Zohran Mamdani for mayor has gotten ample attention. Another holdout who is arguably as significant is the Bronx's most powerful elected and Mamdani's legislative boss, the Speaker, Carl Hesty. His resistance, this is Ben Orskes is reporting from the New York Times. He's the New York State House correspondent for the New York Times, formerly of Los Angeles Times. Ben reports his resistance reflects both the frustration some in his delegation have about Mamdani and the complex political dynamics within an ideologically diverse conference. Mamdani and Hesti have a warm rapport, but the speaker has conveyed some concerns to the progressive upstart. What are those concerns? Mr. Hesti, noting the concerns of an array of Jewish assembly members, has told Mr. Mamdani that he needs to do more to placate colleagues who are concerned by his outspoken criticism of Israel. What are we doing here? Adam Johnson says, Mamdani must throw Palestine solidarity under the bus, and so long as he refuses to do so, support from Dem leaders will not come. The message couldn't be any clearer. He needs to do an Obama Reverend Wright type speech, signaling his willingness to sell out, or they'll continue to ice him. Of course, the New York Times allows Hesti to frame it in mopey sectarian terms about Jewish assembly members, despite Jeffries and Swozy being the most aggressive holdouts. The irony itself, of course, that is not lost upon all of you, I hope, is that Zoran won the majority of the Jewish vote and will most likely win the majority of the Jewish vote. Not that it fucking matters, even if he didn't win the majority of the Jewish vote in the mayoral race. That still would not change the fact that his anti-genocide position is the correct one. And not only is it the correct one, it is the overwhelmingly popular one. The Democratic base, the Democrat Party voters, are not split on the issue of Israel. They're not split on it at all. The overwhelming majority of Democrats recognize what Israel is doing as a genocide, which is what it is. The overwhelming majority of the Democratic Party no longer support Israel, but instead support Palestinians in this process. The overwhelming majority. So these Democrat leaders are demanding that Zoran Mamdani, who won the primary in an incredibly crowded field and was able to cut away because of his earnesty on this singular issue, are telling him to go against the wishes of the majority that voted him into this position, that made him the Democrat contender for the mayoral race. It is crazy. It is crazy to me. What are we doing? Like I suspect this is, I mean, if I was even more cynical, I would say they want him to lose because they're afraid of his anti-Zionist stance, but also more consequentially as well for the National Party, his pro-socialist stance, you know, his sympathies for socialism, that they want him to fucking lose by just, cutting his audience by saying, like, cutting his voters by saying, yeah, actually, I was lying about this fuck Israel shit for years and years. I'm actually going to be super pro-Israel. And I really, really hope he doesn't give an inch to these dumb fucks, because the popular momentum that caused him to cut away from the rest of this crowded primary field is precisely that. His uncompromising, unyielding conviction when it comes to improving the material conditions of all New Yorkers unconditionally. And also, one of the best ways for him to communicate his earnesty was to go against what the popular support for Israel looks like in electeds, and instead say, no, I believe that Israel's doing a genocide. It is doing a genocide. Fuck Israel. Which was a position shared by broad majorities, both in the Democratic base, but majorities in the American population altogether. Okay? That's it. And I really hope he does not get sucked in to the compromise position by Democrat Party operatives who are, on the one hand, doing this shit, refusing to endorse him, but also in a more cynical fashion, I worry that on the other hand, you have the Richie Torreses of the world going up to Zoran and being like, please, you're actually good. Just, dial it back a little bit. Dial it back a little bit. Even Bernie Sanders, as reported, told him to tone down his anti-Israel stance. This, to me, is unacceptable. And the reason why I say that, and we're going to watch his rally today, the Fighting Oligarchy Tour, and I'll look at it. This, to me, is not even about like whether Zoran is compromised or not, whether making that assessment that Zoran is compromised or not. This, to me, shows whether or not he's actually the candidate who can change the trajectory of the National Democratic Party through entryism, or whether or not this will be yet another point of failure for entryism altogether. Because if electeds turn around and do a full reversal and become complacent, then they just become a part of the Democrat Party machine, and therefore they become the same losers that the rest of the Democrats were. This can't happen. We need bold voices. We need bold voices to stand strong. Bold voices who are unafraid to lead on this issue, even when there isn't seemingly a popular support for this kind of thing, because they recognize that it's still wrong. And Zoran was that voice for his whole life leading up to this moment, and I don't assume that he will change. Okay? Like, I would go so far as to say, like, with AOC, with Bernie, there's a different calculation there, but AOC not as knowledgeable on issues that pertain to foreign policy before becoming an elected, whereas Zoran was an activist that came from the Students for Justice in Palestine, that was a BDS, was a BDS advocate as well, longtime DSA member. So his background shows me that he is not as corruptible. This is a real opinion that he has on this issue. It's an earnest opinion that he holds. Yeah, I mean, he was one of the creators of the SJP chapter at Baldwin. Bowden, sorry. So, has AOC been outspoken on Israel? Yes. AOC has been outspoken on Israel, but not from the same, not to the same degree as Zoran, 100%, and outspoken by the metrics of Congress. But even then, she is not the leading voice on the Fuck Israel coalition in Congress, and will sometimes get outflanked by the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example. This is a major issue. It's one that goes back to the thing I was talking about with Nick Fuentes. That's a huge problem. You cannot get outflanked by Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay? You just can't. Once again, the only two uncompromising and unyielding voices that have been against Israel without any significant issues on their record would be Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. Al Green has been pretty good too. Van Hollen has been pretty solid as well. Peter Welsh has been pretty solid on this issue. There are some out there. Summer Lee is another great example of this. She's new on the greener side. Cori Bush was fantastic on this issue and she got penalized for it. Jamal Bowman was great on this issue and got penalized for it. Lost their primaries with unprecedented amounts of money from AIPAC and other pro-Israel lobbying groups that dumped, 12 million and 20 million into two of those different primaries without ever really talking about Israel too, by the way. That's how nefarious this shit is. But ultimately, on the one hand, like I said, I have two different ratings here. Matching it up to the rest of Congress, even the people who I do criticize, like Bernie Sanders, actually stand above the rest of Congress. But they should be going way further, okay? And they should never be telling Zoran to dial it back. That is unacceptable. This is the CNN piece from Edward Isaac Dover, who fucking hates Bernie Sanders, but and hates me as well, by the way, but wrote a fairly positive approach to it. What Bernie Sanders told Zoran Mamdani about anti-Semitism and pushing back on Democratic leaders. Sanders urged his now protege to be firm in calling for Democratic leaders to rally behind him, but also to more carefully address what he said about Israel. Sanders, who is Jewish, urged Mamdani to be cautious about how he approaches talking about Israel. According to the person familiar with their conversation, Sanders told Mamdani he had to do a better job explaining that his criticism is not anti-Semitic and to not let himself seem like he's minimizing the fear Jews in New York and elsewhere feel from the threat of hate against them. Okay? Now, I don't know if that is an exaggeration or a weaponization of Bernie Sanders' maybe reasonable arguments that he made. Like, hey, they won't let you win the fucking election if you even come across remotely as like being, if you come across as even remotely saying like you don't care about Jewish feelings on the matter or whatever, or maybe he just like genuinely thinks that. But we have seen this. We have seen this happen. Okay? We've seen this happen in the past to Corbyn. But right now, we're in a very different time and place. This is no longer the same media landscape that Corbyn was operating in, and it's not the same country that Corbyn was operating in. You no longer have to turn around and refuse to actively criticize Israel. You no longer have to scale back your criticisms of Israel. It's that simple. This is an older piece from. From 2021. Bernie Sanders also told progressives to tone down calling Israel an apartheid state all the way back in 2021. The senator responded to a question on Face the Nation of whether labeling the Israeli government is contributing to the rise in anti-Semitic attacks. Okay, all the way back in 2021. Now, on the one hand, this is completely unacceptable, okay? Because it's the truth. Israel is an apartheid state and was an apartheid state back then. And it was actually not only an apartheid state back then, but it was also recognized as an apartheid state at that point by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, B'Tselem, numerous other human rights organizations. So the fact that Bernie Sanders was saying, like, go against the truth is completely unacceptable. But the reason why, and this is the part where everybody yells at me and says, "Listen, fuck you. You're defending Bernie. You just love Bernie. You're a fucking piece of shit. You're a Zionist yourself." The reason why, while I have this criticism of Bernie Sanders, I still say that it's more complex than you think, is because on the one hand, he's doing that, which is completely unacceptable because he is a liberal Zionist. But also on the other hand, if rated against the rest of Congress, he still, unfortunately, and this is more of an admonishment of Congress and where they're at right now and their inability to see right from wrong and their recognition of the reality, He's still one of the best senators on this issue. He's still actively one of the best congresspersons on this issue. And it's crazy. It's crazy that Bernie Sanders, who will tell other progressive politicians to tone down calling Israel an apartheid state all the way back in 2021 after these human rights groups have openly recognized Israel as an apartheid state, is still one of the best congresspersons on the issue of Israel. Do with that information what you will. This is not a defense of Bernie Sanders. Make no mistake. Okay? If you operate within the...
And that is the feeling of the crowd as they make their way into the Muslim quarter here as part of the flag march, and then on their way to the Western Wall in the heart of the Old City of Jerusalem. It is not Ben-Gvir's first time in the Old City today. He visited the Al-Aqsa compound earlier this morning, the Jewish Temple Mount, as it's known to Jews, where he says Jewish prayer is allowed here, which would be a severe violation of the status quo. It's a claim he's made before. It is clearly a position he has openly pushed, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office has had to push back on that repeatedly, saying there is no change to the status quo, but that is very much what he has pushed, and that's what we've seen pushed here by this crowd. There was a flag here earlier today that said 1967, Jerusalem in our hands, referring to the Six-Day War when Israel seized the Old City of Jerusalem and East Jerusalem itself. And then right below that it said 2025, Gaza is in our hands. This crowd very clearly in favor of the reoccupation and the resettlement of Gaza.
Which is, would you say in all sincerity that this position is now simply just a far-right position in Israeli society? Or would you say that this is now broadly adopted by every subsect of Israeli society, with the exception of the few anti-Zionist Jews in Israel? I'm not talking about the Palestinian citizens of Israel, but just the anti-Zionist Jews in Israel. You know, I think it's inappropriate to consider this to be like a far-right position now. Because if this wasn't a far-right position, if this wasn't like the true center position at this point, just a given, something that is going to happen, then there would be Israelis going crazy at this moment. Not simply to demand a halt to the fighting to extract the remaining 20 hostages or whatever, but like genuinely Israelis that are storming the streets to be like, this is unacceptable, this is fucking completely this is inappropriate, we do not want to murder Palestinians, we do not want to occupy Gaza. So that's the situation. And for those of you who say, well, the Israeli new generation will be like hopefully we'll be able to find a better alternative. No, it's actually the Israeli new generation that is entirely fucking the Haredi population. That is the highest population density, because the ultra-Orthodox are the ultra-Orthodox are keeping the Israeli population above replacement rate. So every single year that goes on, there are more and more incredibly reactionary children. It's the like anti-Zionist or like even liberal Zionist Jews that, you know, live in Tel Aviv or have a deeper connection to the Western world, stuff like that. Like those guys either are leaving Israel or don't feel as connected to Israel, or just simply don't have children at the same levels as like the super far right militant ultra Zionists are having children. And that is a dangerous prospect that I have mentioned numerous times. It's one of those things that people clip chimp me all the fucking time when I say like Israel inevitably is going to become a nuclear armed state that is completely captive to the whims and the mercy of like uneducated ultra Zionist freaks. It's not fully there yet, but in the absence of any sort of real viable resistance against that sort of initiative, against that sort of encroachment, you're just going to see the Israeli society completely be overtaken by the dudes that you're seeing spitting on the fucking Christians and shit. And yes, a big part of this, or if not the most consequential aspect of this societal change, stems from Israeli society and its broad inability to address its settler colonial occupation in its history, and also its ongoing genocide in Gaza. And because they never address or even seek to look at that contradiction, and they only continue to advocate for more death and destruction as a belligerent nation in this region, the more reactionary they get year over year, and they don't even fucking realize it. They just think, oh, well, they're angry at us because they're anti-Semitic. Is it possible that Israel will progressively be more and more separated from Jews outside of Israel, and Israeli Judaism will be seen as a completely different thing? There is a generational opportunity. Yes, I think that's already happening for my generation and younger, for sure. I think that is already a significant attitude shift. I'm not just talking about like the anti-Zionist Jews. I'm talking like straight up people that feel a sense of shame for associating with Israel. I mean, there's so much. The very fact that there is an incredible network designed to constantly churn out new American Jews in the West to go and like live in Israel through birthright, through a Jewish camp and all these other like Jewish institutions of learning, and yet they still fail. They still fail to succeed with this generation. Gives me hope that I think there will definitely be. I mean, I think from this generation onward, like I don't think Israel will ever truly recover and bring in a new crop of American Jews into the Zionist camp.
At Drop Site and here at Breaking Points, we have obtained quite an interesting document. This is the results of a number of private focus groups done around the world, paid for by the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
This is Israel's propaganda operation, but yeah. The implications are immediate. Here, this is like the fertility rate. Jewish demographer warns the threat of disappearance of so-called Israel. Head of the Shoresh Institute, Professor Dan Ben David, warns of strategic... Patrick Ben David. Patrick Ben David. Professor Dunn Ben David. Professor of Valuetainment at the Shoresh Institute of Valuetainment says... He warns the strategic threat to the existence of Israel. His forecast, high birth rates combined with collapsing education quality could push the state into economic and military breakdown. Fertility rate in Israel is 2.9 children per woman, more than twice the OECD average. Okay, this is true, but the highest birth rate is in the ultra-Orthodox sector, 6.5 children per woman. Half of Haredi men don't work, and those who do earn less than half the national average. According to demographer Gilad Malach, the GDP loss from ultra-Orthodox male non-participation is 54 billion shekels, $14.6 billion USD per year. By 2065, cumulative losses could hit 6.7 trillion shekels, which is 1.8 trillion USD. This is what I meant when I said Israel is cooked in and of itself for this reason as well. About half of the children in occupied Palestine and Israel are educated at global periphery standards, especially in ultra-Orthodox schools and peripheral Jewish areas where boys skip core subjects entirely. When education lags behind birth rate, the state slides towards low-income world economic status. For Israel, that means it becomes impossible to fund both its army and its bloated social systems. The implications are immediate: a ballooning demographic that rejects conscription and drains resources, shrinking tax base feeding higher welfare costs, erosion of the tech military age that sustains the Zionist war machine, recruitment gaps, brain drain, and budget wars already hitting the IDF. This is why the academic boycott is so consequential, is so significant, because it's like when there are art boycotts and academic boycotts, you basically starve Israel of its its capacity to do any sort of brain drain whatsoever from a bunch of Jews that live in the Western world and all around the world, rather. And it no longer has that same like communication and back and forth, because every aspect of Israeli society is feeding into the settler colonial entity. It's feeding into the machine of a genocide and apartheid. And therefore, when people understandably want to forcibly sever ties for these things that I just mentioned, all of a sudden it becomes, it no longer can present itself as like a Western aligned nation, you know, this Riviera in a sea of barbaric, scary, monstrous, rapist, decapitators that are, you know, Muslim countries. Isn't that a good thing? Well, it's only a good thing if Israel recognizes this this devastation and stops behaving like it has since its inception. That's the entire point. The entire point of these sorts of boycotts and divestment initiatives isn't to like do revenge on the Jewish society of Israel. The reason for why these initiatives are launched is so that they stop doing the violence and offer dignity, humanity, sovereignty to the Palestinians, offer restitution to the Palestinians. So obviously they're not invested in doing that whatsoever because they're so horny for blood and murder and destruction. But yeah, that is going to cause the inevitable demise of Israeli society as we know it and as we understand it. It's already played a formative role in tarnishing the good reputation of Israel for the past multiple decades, right? Or not even the last multiple decades, really. For the past 8 decades, they basically, Hasanabi, it's not Muslim either. Shut the fuck up, man. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Muslim, okay? God damn, I'm fucking Turkish, dude. I'm Muslim. I'm Turkish. Shut the fuck up. I'm speaking English right now, okay? Jesus Christ. Oh, I can't believe you're not saying Muslim. Oh my God. Who the fuck actually is me on this shit? Like, what the fuck? Why don't you say Muslim? Why don't you say Muslim? In Turkey, we say Müslüman, okay? Müslüman. Yeah, I can't believe I got the fucking haram police in the chat. Like, what is going on? Language, though, that's a valid comment. No, man, it's not. It's not a fucking valid comment. What the fuck? Müslüman. Is that what you want me to say every time? Even Caroline says Muslim, right? By the way, not Muslim. I'm Muslim! The fuck? Shut up! What is going on? Why are white Americans telling me how to say fucking Muslim? Shut up! I'm saying it in English. So is Caroline. ... soon, inshallah. Wait, you didn't say inshallah. You said inshallah. That's fucked up. We replaced vegans with the haram police. No, I banned a vegan earlier today. He kept spamming. He kept spamming over and over again. Will you try once a week? I just asked the Grand Mufti of Brooklyn, and he said that it can be forgiven if you say astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. There you go. We fixed it. Anyway. Recruitment gaps, brain drain, budget wars already hitting the IDF. This is a self-inflicted siege. The entity is rotting from within while Gaza and the resistance bleed from without. This threat is no distant forecast. It's in motion now. I don't even think this is copium. I think this is reality. By the way, because like some people do engage in copium where they say like, oh, Israeli society will collapse any day now. And I don't think so, because their anger, their resentment, and their hatred for Muslims, their hatred for the Palestinians keeps society together. And it would probably be far easier to collapse Israeli society in the absence of permanent war. Like if the dust were to be settled, and if the genocide were to be put on pause, then Israeli society could truly actually collapse. But as long as there is like a beating heart of fascism, a singular focus that Israeli society can focus on, then they're fine. And that singular focus is like the complete evisceration of all Palestinians, this revenge mission that they're on. So that's part of the reason why Benjamin Netanyahu continues this genocide as well. Because, I mean, this is how it happens in fascist movements, even though they like historically fall apart before it gets to this stage. But if this is the reason why we say fascism is a suicide cult, is a suicide pact, because there has to be a permanent outgroup that you're waging war against. So if in the unimaginably unfortunate set of events that take place, and they were able to finalize this ethnic cleansing campaign, then first they would move the crosshairs immediately to what Israeli society designates as Arabs, non-Jews, Palestinian citizens of Israel specifically, and then they would eventually move on to different subcategorizations. They'd probably go back to like Mizrahi, like anti-Mizrahi sentiment. You know what I mean? But it never ends. It's like it's a never-ending a battle, where the in-group shrinks and the out-group grows ever larger. Well, of course, I'm talking the surrounding Arab countries first. Of course, chatters. They would go, before they did that, I'm talking like they finalized the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, and then they would move on to first southern Lebanon, and more parts of Syria as well. They would inevitably try to overtake Jordan as well. But I'm saying that like eventually they would shrink the in-group. You must thank Erdogan for supporting the HTS-type Salafis is already influencing Turkey. Erdogan is doing that because he's a dog to America. This map presented by Finance Minister Smotrich proposes Israel annexing 82% of Judea and Samaria, has the Ministry of Defense logo on it. Yeah. Far right figure, Smotrich.
And leaked to us. So we're going to roll through some of the findings here. But to back up, the purpose of this project is clear. It is to test what messages will work for Israel going forward, particularly, quote unquote, after the war, in order to kind of try to regain some of the international legitimacy and standing that they have lost over the years. They did 15 focus groups, 6 in the United States, 3 groups each in the United Kingdom, Germany, and France. They also did what they call quantitative message testing, 8,050 total interviews, 3,250 interviews in the US, 1,200 each in the UK, Germany, France, and Spain. This is to set a baseline, a starting point, to find out where people are now when it comes to their opinions on Israel. Spoiler, people in Spain do not like Israel's conduct. And then phase 3, what they call animatic testing. This is 5,600 interviews, 4,000 in the US and 1,600 in the UK and Europe, which isn't totally complete, but what by the time that this was put out. But
Yeah, this has been really successful. I'm being sarcastic.
is testing specific, what they call messages, tone, and delivery. So what are they doing? They're sitting down with people. This is very expensive work, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Millions and millions. And it's going to Stagwell Group, which is Mark Penn's firm.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Mark Penn, former Clinton guy, now more of a Fox News Trump guy.
Sort of centrist,
Yeah,
third way type,
but a
maybe.
quirky. Anyway,
Yeah, definitely.
you can look him up. Go down the Mark Penn rabbit hole if you want. Yeah, he and his wife are involved with No Labels. Like They launched No Labels.
There you go. We just explained it perfectly.
Yeah, there you go. So what they do these focus groups, then they do telephone interviews, get baseline, and then they go back to people and try to figure out what can move people from their current baseline, basement level views of Israel to something that gives them some level of international legitimacy and avoids the isolation that is quite obviously coming their way. To short circuit and get right to the chase, effectively what they recommend is ramping up Islamophobia. They argue that when Israel is compared to when Israel is compared to Iran or Hamas, people generally prefer Israel to Iran or Hamas. And they also then survey people's attitudes, particularly in Europe, towards Muslim immigrants, and find that there are a lot of people in Europe who have some.
I mean, I could have told you that. Yeah, they're literally like, we can't defend Israel on the normal virtues of it being like a moral state or whatever. So the greatest way that we could defend Israel is by saying, well, it's a bulwark against like Islamo-style communism, Islamo-Gauchism, or whatever the fuck, right?
democracy in Southeast Asia. Do you think these protests and the state's or government's response challenge that perception today? And how might this unrest actually affect Indonesia's reputation internationally and in the region, especially as it positions itself as a regional leader in ASEAN?
Well, the government should definitely be worried about what they have been failing to do to uphold that image of democracy. They have been curbing freedom of press. They have been attacking journalists. They have been curbing freedom of expression and freedom of speech. They have been criminalizing criticisms and dissents, online and offline. So I think the government should be very worried about their images abroad in terms of democracy and human rights. But one thing that I am...
Speaking of One Piece, this was my manager's birthday gift to me. He just dropped it off alongside a copy of Seth Harp's The Fort Bragg Cartel. Which also Seth sent over. Penguin Random House. Dear Hassan, Seth Harp has asked me to send along a copy of his New York Times bestselling new book, The Fort Bragg Cartel, Drug Trafficking, Murder in the Special Forces. We are both huge fans of your show, and we're grateful for your interest in Seth's work. I hope you'll have a chance to read and perhaps have him on the show soon. Thank you for helping us spread the word about this important, riveting book. Yeah, I'm going to have Seth on soon. I've been talking to him. Apparently, they're going to make a HBO show of the book as well. I was trying to buy that book over the weekend, but it was on a waiting list. Damn.
Very appreciative of Indonesians, even in these times when the governments are attacking its own people. We are looking at people still continuing to express their criticisms in the street, online. People are still organizing. People are still trying to make things better for their fellow Indonesians. So I think one thing is like what